All right, we're about to test the limits, folks, on the Rebel's Edge of how far the president can push a stock up or down, because the president's comments have two big stocks moving to the downside. You want more info? Stay tuned for the Rebel's Edge. Bang.
Oh, there he is. It's official. And by the way, another lounge.
Yep. And American Express should be paying us for this, Pete.
They should.
Broadcasting from the American Express Centurion Lounge out here at LaGuardia.
It doesn't look half bad, man.
No, and I don't have near the rants that I had yesterday, Pete.
Oh.
Because so far, the flights look like they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And the Ubers and so forth. I just skipped Uber and went right to a black car parked in front. I said, screw this.
Probably a good decision.
Might have been, yeah. Welcome, folks. I am Jon Najarian. He is Pete Najarian. And we are bringing you the Rebel's Edge. This is, let's see, we won't have one tomorrow, I don't think, Pete. Because it's a half day. We've tried to remind you guys over and over again, half day of trading tomorrow. I think we do have one next Monday.
Yeah. We'll finally be back.
We don't do them on Fridays. And obviously, the 4th of July is Thursday. So, well, let's dive right in, Pete, to the macro minute. And I'm going to say macro-wise, anytime you've got the head of the ECB, Christine Lagarde, and Jay Powell having a conference to discuss how things are going in their relative jurisdictions. I think that should fall into the category of macro. Absolutely. And so that's my macro minute today. Now you can go over to another channel and listen to people blab about that and how high Christine's heels are or how thick Jay Powell's briefcase is, but we're not going to waste your time.
Well, and I will say this, anytime the Fed chair is talking, we're going to listen just because it can be. It doesn't always mean it's market moving, but it certainly can be. And that's why we watch, and it's very important. By the way, to that point, John, I would just say this. Christine Lagarde, she's always got an incredible tan. If anything else, I mean, she's always impressive with that whole thing. But with the two of them talking and the two of them doing all the things that those types will do, I think that 100% is what the macro world is looking for, is anything that they can pull out of that, John. And by the way, going towards Friday, since we're already here at Tuesday and we've got the half day and the day off on Thursday with July 4th, I will say this, we've got that big jobs report coming as well. So there's a lot of things that are still data points, not just what the Fed chair is talking about today.
Yeah, and I got to believe, Pete, that there'll be a lot of people talking about those jobs reports and maybe a good solid hour of trading on Friday because most of the Bobby Axelrods of the world will be dialed in from their beach homes.
Yeah.
As will Pete.
Yes.
All right, Pete, let's talk about fantastic futures. I'm going to say that energy, which I talked about yesterday with Liz Klayman, and you had done previously with Maria Bartiromo and others, energy's still the story. I mean, here we are going into summer driving season. The peak is supposed to be basically tomorrow through the weekend, and crude oil is through $83 a barrel. So that is my fantastic future, although it doesn't feel so fantastic when you pull out your wallet.
And again, I got a trail right behind you, John, because it is important. The fact that we hit $84 for a barrel today was a pretty big number. It pulled off of that, but we got over $84 a barrel. So it's the highest level since April 26. When you look back to June, it's been in that tight range that we've been talking about, call it 77 to 82. I realize, obviously, today we hit 84, but that was in a blink of an eye before it moved right back down. So interesting to see how crude has been reacting as of late and that tight range that it's been in. But the stickiness over 80 continues to hold on. So we'll see how long this really can last, John.
Yeah, well, indeed, Pete. And I'm going to dive right in, by the way, to stocks and hit what we led off with the president of the United States saying basically that Novo Nordisk, symbol NVO, and Eli Lilly, LLY, are charging way too much for Ozempic and Wegovy. These drugs that were designed to be diabetes treatments and now are used widely on people that are somewhat widely. In other words, Pete, these drugs are being used for people to lose weight. And the president says we're charging way too much, or not we, but those two companies are charging way too much. So they're each trading down about 2%. I guess my comment is, Pete, what about the $40,000 chips over at NVIDIA? I know those aren't the chips that we're talking about when people eat, but if you're going to comment on one particular industry, like the one that Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are in, how do you not comment on others and say, well, I don't know if those should really be $40,000? I mean, honestly, I think there needs to be an examination of a lot of things, but I don't know how you pick on just one particular thing, especially when it's this is not a staple, folks. This is not cereal. This is not meat. It's not milk or any of the major things that we consume. This is instead something to keep you from consuming as much.
Well, and it is crazy, John. I mean, I'm not really sure. I understand sort of, the point of, hey, look, are you gouging and all the rest of that? But at the same time, let's be honest, this is something that you could go to a lot of different industries. So it makes it pretty interesting. And I'll tell you, if you look at Novo Nordisk, it started off the year at 102. It got all the way up to 148. Now here we are close to 142, 143. It's had a great year. Lilly has had a great year, maybe even a better year. I mean, Lilly's been trading, John, a lot like NVIDIA in terms of how fast it's really moved from the lower left to the upper right. They've done very well, and that's a lot of folks out there that are saying, hey, look, they're doing pretty well on this whole weight loss and diabetes drugs and all the rest of it, and they have, and there's no doubt about that. But I'm not sure how you can just, like you just said, how can you just attack these guys over something that's not a staple? That part is pretty interesting to me. I don't know how this whole thing is going to play out, but certainly he's targeting them. And, as we know, there's a lot going on in the political environment right now, and this is just one more example of that.
And, Pete, I would say that just like NVIDIA, just like many of the stocks that are booming from AI, these are buys on dips. Now, that doesn't mean forever. I'm not saying, you guys can grab this clip and play it back to me next year when NVIDIA makes a 30% correction, which, quite frankly, might happen. But I'm saying, Pete, that when you're looking around for entries, Wegovy, they can't keep it in stock. Ozempic and various other versions of that same process, they can't keep it on the shelf. Just go check. And these are $1,000 a month, Pete, these doses. Now, if you have insurance, it's less than that. So I understand it's expensive. But again, it's not a, quote, staple or necessary, even though it might be good for people's survival if they're way, way too big. But yeah, all right. Let's talk, Pete, about Paramount, P-A-R-A, because this one, this was a 60 some odd dollar stock in 21. But as most of us recall, we were all stuck inside. The government more or less shuttered us in. And we saw all of these stocks in that space explode. Anybody who delivered content to your home through streaming did very well. Now, not doing so well. It's not $60 anymore, it's $10. And that's after it bounces off a very fierce bottom. Yeah. So why is it bouncing? Barry Diller says, maybe I'll sign an NDA and take a look at this thing. Yeah, at 1/6 or 1/7 of where it was trading, Pete, I think he'd be getting a pretty good deal.
I think you're right. I think he knows it. He was up against Sumner Redstone before. Obviously, Sherry's taken over, but and lost out on this one. But he's been there before already, so it's something that obviously he's got interest in. He's going to sign whatever he's got to sign. I think he does have interest and realizes exactly what you were just talking about, John. Can they build this thing back up to what it once was? Because it's not what it once was, but could it be? And I think the answer is he probably feels like yes, he can do that. He's that kind of a guy. And when you look at it, John, the free cash flow of this company at $15 billion, pretty daggone impressive for a stock that's trading right now at about a $7 billion market cap. Now, obviously, that's because there's debt and everything else. But all that being said, stock is at the bottom level of the 52-week lows versus highs. It's like you were saying, it's about a $10 stock. It's been below 10, but it's been as high as 17. I think Barry Diller's looking at this one, and I don't know if he's just going to kick the tires. I think he ends up grabbing it. By the way, there are some shorts out there. So if you're one of those shorts, you might be a little nervous when Barry Diller's starting to kick the tires, because there's a strong possibility that he decides to make something out of Paramount again and maybe rebuild it to what it once was.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Pete. You and I thought that maybe Larry Ellison's son with Skydance, or I think that's what he calls his production company, was going to take it over. But nope, and now it's half of the price that he was supposedly looking at. I think the Redstone family, Pete, has really screwed up this negotiation, and now it's probably going to get taken out for half of what it would have been bought for last year. So good for Barry Diller and his shareholders, bad for the Redstones and their, I forget what they call that company, Pete, but something entertainment. But anyway, let's talk about Tesla. Your buddy Elon Musk. Basically, they reported that they delivered 443,000 vehicles. Now, to put that in perspective, folks, that's the second quarter. To put that in perspective, I don't think in the history of General Motors, Ford, or Stellantis, which used to be Chrysler and so forth, that these guys have ever delivered a quarter of that in their history. And Musk does it every quarter. So these numbers were outstanding. It was versus an analyst consensus of about 4,000 or 5,000 cars or vehicles less than that. Do they have warts on some of these launches, like the Cybertruck? Yes. But the stock was $140 a share in April, Pete, and now it's $90 higher than that. So again, for all the people who want to bet against Elon Musk, good luck with that.
Yeah, fighting against Elon's never been an easy sort of a thing, for sure. I'll tell you what, John, in the first 2 hours, they absolutely eclipsed the full day of trading in terms of the shares themselves, 110 million shares or more in the first couple of hours. Pretty incredible. That's definitely well above a full day. I will say this, it's the one pushback that I would have is the analysts were out there and they were expecting 439,000. They delivered 443,000. That's all great. The only issue I have with that is a year ago, if you go back, they actually delivered 466,000. So when you look at some of those numbers, you can move numbers around and make them seem however you want, but they are down in terms of what they were able to accomplish. Now, that being said, they're probably down for all the right reasons in terms of some of the stuff is just not selling at the prices and the levels that they want, so they probably pulled back just a little bit on that. The Cybertruck, John, that's the interesting one. The demand apparently, from what I've been reading, is there. They just can't get it out there fast enough for people. So that's something pretty interesting. I don't know about you. I'm not sure I'm a Cybertruck guy. I think it's interesting, but it ain't for me. I'll stick with my F-150 and drive around in that. The one thing I will also say, after this big run over the last couple of days and maybe even couple of weeks where this stock has been rocketing to the upside once again, I'm looking at the PE levels, and now it's getting kind of stretched a little bit, John. If we're looking at about an 84 forward PE, I start to think, you know what? Great run for Tesla. I can understand why it's up today. If I had been in there, I would be trimming probably today.
Yep. It's all about discipline, folks. Yeah. And do you cheerlead your stocks? Many of us do. I cheer when I'm winning, and I kind of glum when I'm not. But you also cut your losses, when you're not winning, and any of the shorts in here are not winning. And meanwhile, the other side of this play, Pete, why I would say that even though I would trim, just like Pete said, meaning if I had 10,000 shares, would I sell maybe half of it on this $90 run? I would. I really would. Or I'd start aggressively writing options against it, meaning like at the money options that are out a month into the future. But AI, this guy's got more data, Pete, for AI than almost anybody. Other than credit card companies and so forth, this guy has more data about the roads, about tire wear, about speeds at different times of the day or night. I mean, you name it, as well as, of course, self-driving. So I would really say AI, as Musk's other company is called XAI, not Twitter, which is just X, but XAI. I'd say you want to watch this one for AI, Tesla, that is. Yeah. All right, quickly, we have the stock Ardelyx. We don't talk about it a lot. They've got a treatment. And this is kind of an interesting thing, Pete. They're a biotech, and their treatment is they have an oral treatment, meaning of just as it sounds, you can take a pill, or you can take it delivered another way. And they wanted to have both available. And the FDA more or less said, you know what, if you're going to try to do both of those, we are going to hold you to a different level of scrutiny for how it really works, because the one we've tested you on is the one that we've approved. And so these guys announcing that, okay, they're not going to do that, that meant that they're not going to sell nearly as much, which means the stock drops and it's down 20%. Look at that chart that Jared just put up there, falling off a cliff there. So that's a lot of value erased very quickly.
Yeah, it's really too bad. They really are getting absolutely hammered, and this is a kidney situation that they're dealing with here in terms of the drug itself. The cash burn, the debt levels, those could be a problem, I think, going forward, John. And obviously, they won't be bringing in as much as you just said because of the decision that they felt like they had to make. There is a large short interest in here, 13, 15%. Boy, they're smiling today because this stock is getting absolutely hammered, to your point, down 20% on the day. It makes a lot of sense. At some point in time, do some of those shorts maybe start to cover? Probably not just yet. They probably feel like they are in control right now, and there's a little bit of room to the downside. Stock's been between $3 and $10. Here it is trading somewhere close to $6 off this big sell. At some point, they might consider it. But right now, John, they're probably pretty happy about things and trying to think about what kind of champagne they're going to have as this thing has dropped 20% today.
That's the shorts that are with the champagne, not the company, folks.
No, absolutely not.
All right. Well, as far as sports, Pete, for wrapping up the week, I mean, we only have 2 shows basically this week, folks. So let's wrap it up, Pete, with a little sports. What do you got?
I think it's pretty interesting, John. You've got the Boston Celtics. We all know they had an incredible year. They had a great, at home they were outstanding. They were one of the best, if not the very best team there was in the NBA at home. They obviously won the finals, the championship. They did everything they needed to. They've got 2 big-time players with Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown. But, John, how about the money that they're paying these guys? Jason Tatum just signed a $314 million 5-year deal. He's 26 years old. And then you've got Brown. He had just signed his not too long ago. By the way, the top 2 contracts in all of the NBA and NBA history. So that's a pretty big statement on what they felt those guys were worth in terms of the Boston Celtics not only winning this year, but maybe in years to come. So that's pretty interesting. These guys are absolutely on fire. But how about this, John? They sign all these guys. They just sent another guy a couple of $100 million as well. And all of a sudden, the majority owner says, you know what? I think I'm going to walk away. We paid in 2002 $360 million for the Boston Celtics. You know what they're valued at as of 2023? So this doesn't even count this year. $4.7 billion. 4.7. That was 2023 value. Let's just say it's $5 billion. Let's just make it clean. It's a $5 billion group of guys. You've got $360 million is what you paid. I'd say those results are pretty good, John. I think if you're a trader, you'd want to have those kind of results. I can understand the owner wanting to say, you know what, I've had a great run. This is absolutely incredible. He seemed like the happiest guy in the world and wanted to stay there forever, but maybe he's starting to feel like this is getting a little toppy. I don't know, but he suddenly wants to sell. What do you think about that after you've paid all this money and now you want to sell? Is there anything weird going on here, or do you think it's just interesting that it all happens at the same time?
Well, I think one of the things that they had to do was basically secure the fans' continued interest in those season tickets and so forth, Pete. So they just did that. Anybody who had tickets ain't giving them up because they've got Tatum and Brown. And then, like you said, they'll put another great team together, I believe, next year, and you have to sell tickets. Yep. So I think if they didn't spend the money on those two and he tried to sell, the price would be less, believe it or not, even though this is a liability. A salary is always a bit of a liability. I think it's a liability for them, but it's an understandable expense in this case.
Yeah, well, and these guys definitely show that they deserve the numbers that they're getting. But boy, these numbers are outrageously high. Gosh, it's amazing to have two guys on the same team with the highest in history. That's not so bad. $600 million between the two of them, a little bit more than that, actually. That seems like a pretty good deal to me. Then you got Porzingis, and you got all these other guys, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. John, I know it's early, but I wanted to throw this out to you. I got a sleeper for you, and if you have a different one, you tell me. But what do you think about this? My sleeper for the NFL this year. Now, I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl, but you see it right up there in front of you, the Atlanta Falcons, right? Now, here's why I say that, John. What were they really missing last year? And can you even name the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons last year, or quarterbacks with an S at the end? Because there were multiple guys playing, and most of them are names that nobody's ever heard of for all the right reasons. They're either very young or they just weren't very good. So they go out and they grab Kirk Cousins, right? That seems like a pretty good move because Kirk, despite a lot of people's thoughts about him, turned out to be a heck of a quarterback over the last few years. And so you've got Kirk Cousins. As long as he gets healthy, John, and by the way, they did protect themselves if he's not healthy because they ended up having a pretty high pick with Michael Penix. Yeah. So that's looking like a pretty good locked up thing to me. You got Bijan Robinson at running back. You got Randall Moore from your old Chicago Bears is now down there as one of the lead receivers. One of the better receivers, I think, in the NFL, quite frankly. Doesn't get talked about enough. Then you've got Kyle Pitts at tight end. All five of your offensive linemen are back in one of a lot of people consider one of the best offensive lines in football. So you put all that together, the defense can only get better if the offense gets better. That's always better for the defense, right? So I'm going to put those guys out as my sleeper. They were 7-10 last year, I think was their record. I think these guys easily can get into the double digits. Maybe they get up to 11 or 12 games. I don't know. But I think as long as Kirk is healthy, this is a team that could be very, very interesting as we get into the season. And all of a sudden, probably, John, let's just say October, people might be saying, geez, have you seen the Atlanta Falcons? These guys are pretty damn good. I think that's what's going to happen. We'll see if it does. If not, I'm dead wrong. But I kind of feel like Atlanta is the sleeper of the entire NFL.
Well, they're going to get a lot of eyeballs for all the things you just listed, Pete. I will say that another team that has shown promise throughout the years but hasn't had the coaching now has the coaching, and that's the Chargers. So the LA Chargers, folks, the Bolts. So now that they got Harbaugh, now that they got a real offensive coordinator, I think this is going to be a team to watch as well. Now, I know they've got, Justin Herbert, one of the best young quarterbacks in the league, but, he's shown a lot of promise, but unfortunately, they haven't been able to surround him with the right players to get him to where the Falcons hope to be. So I would say, Pete, the Bolts are worth a look, even though they're probably a little higher on the scale. They're not like way higher than the Atlanta Falcons because they've been an underperformer for years. I think that's about to stop. I don't think Harbaugh put up with underperformance anymore. So watch the Bolts.
And keep an eye on the Bolts, John, to be a team that runs a lot more than they used to run. And that will open up, believe it or not, the passing game for the quarterback Herbert, in my opinion. I mean, he's going to do what he managed to do at Michigan, and especially with J.J. McCarthy and the year that he had, despite the fact that they ran the ball. That was a running football team, and yet the quarterback had a great year. It just shows you, if you can run the football, it opens up the game to throw in the football. And I think that Jim Harbaugh proved that, John, at the University of San Diego, Stanford, the 49ers, and going back to Michigan. So I think there's a lot of reasons why the folks out there ought to be pretty excited about what the Chargers look like. And Joe Alt at left tackle is going to be one monster of a player.
I was going to say, you've got a huge road grader out there at left tackle. The happiest guy on that team, Pete, isn't Harbaugh. It's Herbert. The blind side.
Yeah.
All right. Well, folks, as we said, it is a half day tomorrow, half day of trading. You may have noticed that we launched our partnership with Grant Cardone yesterday officially. We are pushing that out hard and fast right now with a lot of videos, and hopefully a lot of you guys will opt in to receiving information from us about that. A lot of cool stuff coming your way, and we're all very excited about it at Market Rebellion. Yeah. So with that said, Pete, let's hope everybody has a safe and happy 4th of July, Independence Day for Americans, and we will see you again Monday next week at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.